I'm Thomas J. Misuraca, and if you'd like to learn more about the two plays that I'm writing for Roaring Epiphany Production Company, check out this video. I'm not quite sure when my love of theater began. When I was younger, I had the average amount of theater. Mom took us to a show every once in a while. I lived in Boston. We did have a good theater district there, but it wasn't the first thing that we would do as a group or a family. But we'd go to shows in school. Now, my sophomore year English teacher, Ms. Ty, took us to see Macbeth at, I believe, it was the North Shore Theater that was in the round. So very classic Shakespeare. And then she told us the entire story of Macbeth before we went in, so we knew what we were going to see. And that, I think, is when I kind of fell in love with the idea of storytelling on stage because, as I grew older, I began to appreciate Shakespeare more for the language. But when you're an angsty high school kid and somebody marches on with a head on a stick on stage, it's just amazing. I mean, witches, ghosts. It was just, I mean, it hit all those things that maybe I didn't think at that age that theater would hit, and that was when I really loved that that world that it took me away. And to this day still, Macbeth is probably one of the plays that I've seen on stage most. And writing and storytelling wise, I was actually more literary prose and short stories kind of person. uh, Writing plays was always like something I would do a little bit on the side, and it took me a long time to actually get into the physical world of writing. People who know me know this part of the story, that when I graduated college, Emerson College in Boston, with a degree in professional writing, and I kind of was more looking for creative writing, novels and short stories. And I did and still do have short stories published in literary magazines. I had one novel published, but it wasn't quite giving me the sense of reward that I apparently was longing for. So I had this one play that I wanted to start working on, that I've been working on, and wanted to bring it to life, have it workshopped. So I joined First Stage LA out here in Los Angeles, and we began to work on it. And again, it's a long story of that play wasn't as good as I thought it was. I started working on other plays, started working these short plays, and eventually I would start having my work appear on stage in front of an audience and hearing the audience's reaction. And call it a big ego, but I very much enjoyed that. To have, excuse me, to have people react to my words, to laugh, to gasp, to cry. I think that's really when I was bitten by the theater bug. And since then, I really began writing almost 90% for theater. And at this point, I can't think of wanting to write another way. I do love prose. I do love the ability of prose, of writing, in worlds that you can't bring to the stage, ideas and thoughts that's hard to translate on the stage. And I do love getting lost in the written word, but there's still nothing like the stage, actors bringing your roles to life, them bringing something to it that I didn't know was there, a director bringing something to it vision wise that I didn't know was there, and that whole collaborative experience. There's really nothing like it in the world. I've been a storyteller all my life. Since I could even not even put a pen to paper, I still, would tell stories by drawing pictures. And eventually I just found the way, to writing is the way to tell the stories. And once I got to theater, it really felt like those stories were a lot easily told. I had a professor in college who would talk about writing, and when talk about writing prose and descriptions, and say that he could write pages and pages of that. And when he got to dialogue, it scared him. And I was weirded out by that because I'm like, I'm the complete opposite way. Writing the description is hard for me, but writing the dialogue, I can, that just, once that starts flowing, it doesn't stop. Theater is a unique experience because, as I mentioned before, it's a collaborative process, especially when you're a writer, any type of writer, fiction, nonfiction. A lot of that time is spent in solitude where you're at home alone in the middle of the night or early in the morning, typing on a computer or, writing in a journal, making notes, doing all this creating by yourself. And first of all, the big question that nags all of us, is this good? Am I wasting my time? Do I have something that's worth telling? And I think more so than any other format, theater allows you to get a sense of that immediately. A lot of us do workshops, so that's the first thing we do when we write a piece is we take it into our monthly or weekly or whatever workshop you have, and you get to hear it sampled by readers, and we all know when we're hearing things if it's working, if it's not working, and it never hurts to have that validation of somebody else saying, hey, yes, this works, or no, this doesn't work. We think you may need to do a little bit more of this, it needs more character, it needs to be trimmed. So that's part of what I think theater brings that other places do, that type of writing does not. And the actual, and then when you take it to the next level of production, if you're involved with that, that's another exciting thing. You get to help create this world. I've been fortunate enough to sit in auditions and watch people show up, and it's just, no matter how many times I do this, it's always amazing that at the end of the auditions, the right people always show up for the right part. And I don't know, it just always seems to happen that way. And then, the rehearsal process of working on this piece, occasionally if it's more of a workshop piece, we'll make changes. And it's just, again, it becomes a machine, and we become a family. And that's, and that's the greatest part, I think, is the family that you create in theater. That being said, one of the saddest parts of theater is it's not so permanent, that you have this family for a short amount of time. And then the worst thing about it is closing night comes, and yeah, you make these new contacts and you see each other in different forms and you work with each other shows, but each family is its own little unit, and they're all very different from each other. So my writing process is usually the same throughout. Once I have an idea, I usually sit down with a notebook, jot down that idea. Sometimes it flows pretty easily and it's page after page of dialogue. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a struggle and I kind of have to walk away and come back. Then I will sit down at a computer and try to hack out a first draft. I'm a very stern believer of a crappy first draft. I know a lot of people want the first draft to be near perfect, but I think that's a dangerous habit to get into. I think just write crap, get it all out on paper, because your friend is editing, and anyone will tell you writing is editing and more editing and re-editing and even more editing. So once I have at least one full body of work, whether it be a 10-minute play or full length, full length I usually chop down into little bits of scenes, but 10-minute plays usually are all at once. It'll come out and then I'll sit down. I usually like to do it with a tablet. I like to be away from the computer and go over it word by word, line by line, and just begin the editing process. And it just, as I said, becomes that ping pong game of editing, making the changes, reading it again, editing it again, making the changes. And until I at least feel it's good enough to maybe go to a workshop stage, or we'll bring it into one of the workshops that I'm involved in, have them read it. Then, of course, there's more feedback. And eventually I just kind of have to say, all right, I'm going to just send it out and submit it, or give it to somebody to hopefully produce or take it to the next step somewhere. But, that doesn't mean that I won't go back again a little while down the road and give it one more revision. I heard about the Roaring Epiphany Company they had a call, I think maybe 3 years back. It's so tough to tell time with COVID because we lost that whole year, but I'm pretty sure it's 3 years ago. They were doing a call for sci-fi plays, science fiction plays. And at that time, I don't know if I read too much description about who they were or what they did, but I submitted to them. I'm that kind of person. If I have something to submit, so I had a sci-fi noir, like a mystery, sort of like Raymond Chandler-ish type play. Of all the bars and all the universes and all the planets, she had to walk into mine type thing. And I always, it's one of my favorites. It's won awards, and I thought it would be perfect for a sci-fi night. And they ended up picking it up and doing it. And that's when I discovered that they actually audition. They have opens auditions to all actors of any abilities, including disabilities, all races, all genders. Very open with their casting to give opportunities to those who may not have the opportunities. And the biggest disappointment was the show was about a week before I was actually able to be in New York, so I missed it. But it sounded like it was a great time and that they all had fun with it. And I've seen calls since then, and I've sent out materials to them. Nothing seemed to gel. But then I actually got a call from RJ, the producer, saying he would like me to write some specific plays for them. And I couldn't have been more delighted to get involved with them again and to write specifically for this group, which I think is doing some very important work. So Roaring Epiphany Company came to me and Steven and asked us if we would write a couple of plays for a night of shorts for their actors. And I think as the process was going along and we came up with 2 plays each, 4 plays total, that seemed to really connect with their mission, that they decided at that time that they would like to work with us a little bit more this year. And that's when they made us writers in residence with the company. So yeah, it was a little like we started there and then we became the writers in residence. And now we're working on our second series of shorts with them. And I believe we're going to do one more before the year is out. For the May event, we asked the actors to tell us what roles they wanted to play. So RJ put together a survey for the actors to let us know who they wanted to play, what this character was, what kind of secret this character was hiding, what this character's weaknesses were, what their strengths were, a little bit of something, and some were more detailed than others. And then it was the job of me and Steven we were given 3 actors for one and 2 actors for another. We broke them up evenly, and it was our job to create a story around these characters. And I'll tell you, it was a little daunting at first because, wait a minute, how do we make all of this work? And I guess a challenge is a good thing because it really inspired me to write one very, I wouldn't say very dark, but one very sort of meatier story than I thought I would be writing when I was actually told who the characters were. But so one is a very sort of no exit type, 3 people in a room, all kind of arguing with each other. Each has a secret. Each has maybe something a little bit more mysterious happening with them. And it was great that this so evolved. And then the second one, I kind of purposely wanted to do a little bit of a lighter tone. And it just ended up being a very fun piece with 2 characters. And I think I was able to get a little bit of silliness in there with also a little bit of heart. So I think it was a good challenge to sort of be told the characters we want, but then that we sort of had to bring them to life. And we've already had the first rehearsal with one of them, or actually a couple of rehearsals with one of them. And it was wonderful to hear how excited they were with these characters, that I don't think they even expected them to be maybe as full as they were, because it was also a little nervous because you're thinking, oh, if they're coming up with the characters, do they think that they could, that they should be writing this piece? But they were all very excited, and they all very felt that there was something in there that they really, really wanted to sink their teeth into as an actor. With these two plays, I think the first thing I want people to get out of them is entertainment. As a writer, I think the most important thing we can do is to entertain people. Of course, it's our job to be socially relevant. It's our job to be informative, to educate, but we can't do any of that if we're not entertaining. So with these two plays, my top job as the playwright is to make sure they're entertaining, because it's also, as I noted earlier, my responsibility to these actors who sort of, gave me the responsibility to come up with good characters for them. So I want an audience to walk away hopefully seeing these characters were something that I built off of ideas that they had, and then they, with their talents, gave even more to them, added layer after layer. So I would really like people to be entertained, have a, for the one that's a little bit more serious, maybe think a little bit like, what was, what was that about? Have a conversation with someone afterwards. What do you think that was? There's nothing better as a writer to hear somebody debating the story it is that you were trying to tell. The second one's a little bit more fun, so I want people to walk away saying that was cute, some funny bits in there, and we were entertained. I'm really looking forward to these actors. I mean, they're just so wonderful. They give 110% to all the work that they do, and they just seem to have fun doing it. And I absolutely love that. They are very excited about these pieces. They've found their own little niche in each character that they're doing. And even though we're in the early part of the rehearsal process, they're already building upon what was on the page. And I know when we get to the night of the show, they're going to have an amazing character that people are going to remember. I think people should support all theater. I know it's tough, especially if you're in theater. If you're like me, you get about 10 invites a week, and it's hard to get to all of them. And sometimes you're so exhausted from your own work that it's hard to see it. But Roaring Epiphany Company opens their doors to actors who don't usually get the opportunity to act. A lot of them are on the spectrum or special needs, or just are just not the type of person that is able to go out to a audition like all the other actors that we know. It's a struggle. It's a struggle for them, and I really think they should be supported, because they have to work a little bit harder than all the other actors, and the payoff is amazing. I even hate to mention that this is special needs or they're on the spectrum, because I'd say most of the time you wouldn't know, because they're just so great. So that's why I think everybody should take the time out, watch it, and you'll enjoy it. I think it'll put a smile on your face no matter what. So it was requested that we write plays specifically for Zoom, and as a playwright who's worked with lots of theater companies and always agreeable, I said I'm not going to do that, because I was tired of writing Zoom plays. So these plays are written with Zoom in mind, but they can be performed live on stage. So maybe sometime down the road, we'll be able to see these on stage and have a little bit more life brought into them than just, unfortunately, what we see as talking heads. But Roaring Epiphany is also very tech savvy, so I'm sure there will be some fun elements that they will add to bring life to these pieces. But they were written in the back of my mind to be on stage, but understanding the limitations that we have in Zoom. So I like the Playwright Residency program at REPC because it is pretty hands-off, that they seem to trust my and Steve's talents, that they know we're going to tell a story that is important, that fits the characters and the actors that are involved. And they allow us to spread our wings. As I said, I feel that I was a little bit more challenged being told these are the characters that you have to write the story for. And even the first time around, just hey, come up with 2 stories, and those are the ones I wrote specifically for Zoom, for 3 or 4 characters that are 20 minutes long, and it was nice to have those parameters that allowed me to hone yet stretch my creativity. But then when the finished product was done, they were very happy with it, and they weren't, there wasn't, oh, can you change this for this, and we need that. They trusted that Stephen and I were good enough storytellers that this is the story that should be told. And I think the end results of the first show were great. I thought all 4 pieces were well done, well received, and I look forward to this next round. I know my 2 pieces are so far getting excitement from the playwrights, and I'm sure Steve's are too. As a matter of fact, it's kind of, yeah, maybe Steve and I should be working together, but I do like that I don't see his work, and then we get to compare and contrast how we worked on the project together. And I've also been learning a lot from him as well. So, he tells stories a little differently. His stories are very, he has some very full-bodied characters in his stories, and I do strive to even learn from him to make my characters even better. I think more voices need to be heard in the theater world, because this is where we get to experiment more. This is where we get to sort of strip naked on stage with our words and push the buttons of the world and really try to pinpoint what is happening out there. And it has to be a universal project. It has to be a universal process as well. Because theater, as I mentioned before, is a very collaborative process, I think it, again, teaches us what we should strive for in this world, that we shouldn't be at it alone, that we should have all kinds of voices. One actor comes in with a different experience than another actor, and to bring them together into a piece, as I said, it brings a new life to it that I might have there on the page, but it's never going to be realized if I use the same voices over and over again. I strongly believe in diversity, actually to the point of I used to write plays that were specifically not, had no call for gender or age or ethnicity. I tried to write for like the everyman, and I realized that was even somewhat detrimental. And I do still write like that. I try to write as many plays where it doesn't matter if this is a man or a woman, what race they are. But I also feel sometimes if in the wrong hands, you don't get the right cast for that. So sometimes I feel it's important to write a role for a BIPOC character, for an Asian character, for a Middle Eastern character, for women, for men, for gays, straights, transgender. And there's still a lot of stories that I feel that I should be telling, and I'm getting there, and it's still a learning process for me. But I think the more I grow, the more stories I want to tell that are more specific to races and genders. That, yes, this is it my story to tell? I don't know, but I'm given the gift of being able to tell stories. So I want to tell the most important stories I can tell. And right now, they need to be about those who aren't as visible on stage as they should be. So the reason I believe that other playwrights and actors should get involved in this theater is because it is inclusive. And I know RJ plans to broaden that inclusivity even more. Actors, it shouldn't matter an actor's race or size or age or abilities. If they are there and they want to act and bring a story to life, then we should give them the stories to bring to life. We should work with them and help them bring stories to life. And I think the most important thing is that we don't write specifically for anyone with special needs or on the spectrum. We write stories for everyone, and they tell them. So I feel Roaring Epiphany is important because, as I've mentioned multiple times, that they give a chance to actors who don't often get chances. And I understand for many theaters, it gets busy. You're doing a show after show, and you want to be inclusive, but you're just doing your work. Roaring Epiphany goes out of their way to make sure all actors get to have the experience of auditioning, of prepping a show, of rehearsing, of putting on a show. And I think that should be not only celebrated, but supported. I'm Thomas J. Misuraca, and if you enjoyed hearing about the 2 plays that I'm working on for Roaring Epiphany Theater Company, please come out to our show, check out their website, and support theater.